Hello everyone! Dear friends, today I will be making a very delicious cake called apple Bavarian cake. It's an unreal delicacy. It reminds me of something, a cake from Bushka, our classic childhood cake, but in a new different way. Today I will show you how I make it and explain how you can diversify such a cake and what to substitute for apples. Let's start with preparing the apples. I will need 1 kilogram of sweet and sour apples. Today I have Semmerenka apples. I like Semmerenka the most, but in theory you can use any apples. So we will also need a pot with a thick bottom and a lid. So we add approximately 3 to 4 tablespoons of water to the bottom of the pot. The apples need to be peeled. Remove the core and slice the apples thinly. Place the sliced apples into the pot. On top of the apples, carefully and evenly sprinkle about 2 or 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Cover with a lid and put it on the heat. I start with high heat, then reduce it. As soon as it starts to boil, I lower it to the smallest setting and let it simmer. The apples have already started boiling. I set it to the lowest heat and will let it simmer for approximately 15 minutes. Now let's prepare the cream because it will need to cool. And the apples will need to cool as well. And at the very last moment, we will prepare the dough. I will need 2 eggs. Beat the eggs. Add all the sugar right away. And beat for about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Add 2 tablespoons of flour. Mix it a little like this so the flour doesn't fly all over the kitchen. And just mix it. Now pour in the milk. First, add about 1/3 of the milk. Mix it, then add the rest. Now, add another portion of the milk, but I have a small container here, so I'll add the rest of the milk. Oops. All right, that's it. Pour all of this into the pan. Add the remaining milk. And I add a bit of vanilla. If you have vanilla sugar, then add it along with the sugar. I did take a whisk. And at first, it's better to use a whisk for the first few minutes, and then you can use a spoon. So we set it, I first turned the heat up a bit. And literally after 2 minutes, I lower the temperature. On the lowest heat, the cream should cook. I lowered the temperature. On my stove, it's set to number 7. You can even set it to number 6. Look, the cream is already starting to thicken. The main thing is not to walk away and to keep stirring constantly. Like this, literally within a minute, the cream is almost ready. Now I've lowered the temperature even more. I've set it to number 5 on my stove. The main thing is to use a pan with a thick bottom so that the cream doesn't burn. It's very important to stir it quickly here. Look, now you can take a spoon and stir with the spoon like this. See, I'm turning it off. And keeping it on the hot stove so that the cream can thicken a little more. To thicken, but I'm turning it off now to prevent it from burning. Once the cream is ready, we set it aside from the stove. I've already turned it off and it's been sitting for about 2 minutes just cooling down. Now we transfer it to a small container to cool faster. Look at the cream we've got. Smooth, without lumps, beautiful. What nuances might there be in making custard specifically in a pan? The pan speeds up the whole process. We don't use a double boiler. Keep stirring to avoid burning. I always manage to make it without lumps. Well, it happens. It happens. If it turns out lumpy, just strain it through a fine sieve. The main thing is to ensure the cream doesn't stick to the pan. This is very important. For this, you just need to get used to what temperature to set on your stove. But even if it happens that, it's slightly caught on, not burned, but just caught a bit, strain it through a sieve. Well, in general, it's nothing serious, but it speeds up the whole cream preparation process by half an hour. I do it in the pan in 5 minutes, whereas in a double boiler, it takes 25-35 minutes. The cream needs to cool down, and I already have the butter prepared. It's at room temperature, and I will later combine the butter with the cream. So I'm waiting for the apples to be ready, and then I'll finish preparing the cream. Look at the apples. They have all settled down like this. Now, we turn it off. Let them sit for 2-3 minutes to stop bubbling. I will transfer them to a separate container to cool down. When the cream has cooled, we start whipping the butter. Whip until it turns white, then gradually add the cream. Continue until all the cream is added to the butter. Now we just need to wait for the apples to cool completely and be at least not too hot, just slightly warm. There is excess liquid in the apples. It definitely needs to be drained. I usually transfer everything to a sieve and the excess liquid drains away to have as little water as possible. There was apple juice. Also, if it's very hot, like it is for me today, I'll put the cream in the refrigerator until the moment when I start spreading it over the entire cake. Now let's prepare the dough. I take a small container like this one, so it's convenient to mix the dough and not have to clean the table afterwards. We add the flour here, add the butter. In principle, you can substitute it with margarine, but the taste of the dough will be slightly different. Rub the butter with the flour. I usually do it like this, spreading the butter all over the flour from all sides to make it easier, so the spoon is no longer needed. And like this, I mix the butter with the flour into a uniform crumb. Add 2 full tablespoons of sour cream of any fat content to the dough. Add half a teaspoon of baking soda here and a tablespoon of vinegar. Extinguish it well like this. Into dough. Add the soda with vinegar here and mix everything. The dough. Carefully gather everything into one single lump with your hands to form the dough. No more flour. I don't add any more. Look at the dough I got. I don't need it for too long. It has gathered into a lump like this. And let it rest for a little while. You can cover it with plastic wrap for at least 5 minutes. Once the dough has rested, transfer it to the table. And here you need to knead it with your hands for about 3-4 minutes. The dough is ready. Now, divide it into 9 equal parts, like this. Prepare a baking sheet lined with either parchment paper or foil and preheat the oven to 200 degrees. Roll out each piece of dough into a rectangle like this, approximately 20 by 15 feet. Take the apples and place them on one part. Don't go all the way to the edge. Look at how much juice is at the bottom. The apples are very juicy, but it's better to remove the excess moisture. It's great that you can add anything you like to the filling. You can add nuts, raisins, or any dried fruits to the apples as you wish. Make a filling similar to a strudel, for example. It will be very tasty. Plums or cherries, I don't know. Well, anything you like. It's delicious with blueberries, with blueberry jam. It just needs to be thick, like a jelly. When you mix it with sugar, it gels in the fridge. You can add that too. Anything you like. Now cover with the second piece of dough. Like this, use your fingers to seal all the edges. If you get a few small holes on top, it's not a big deal. The main thing is that there aren't too many. Now, it's easiest to use a ruler. Form a rectangle like this and transfer it to the baking sheet. Look at these preparations I've made. Now we will bake as well. You don't need to roll the dough too thin. This way it will be easier to transfer to the baking sheet. Place in a preheated oven at 180 degrees for approximately 15 minutes. So look, transfer the already cooled layers onto the board where we will assemble the cake. You can spread a little underneath like this so the cake doesn't slide around. So now we spread cream on the first layer. The main thing is that all the layers are cold. Place the second layer and continue like this until the end. Cover the cake with cream on the top and sides. Once everything is covered with cream, place it in the refrigerator for at least 3 hours. It's better if it stands for 4 to 5 hours, of course. 4 hours have passed for me. Now I decorate with ground nuts. I just ground them in a blender. So it's advisable to dry the nuts in the oven or on a pan before using them. I crush them and sprinkle them like this. You can also use raisins, so any decoration sticks well to the cream. In my opinion, it's tastiest with nuts. Nuts and apples go very well together. So now let's cut it and see how it looks inside. Oh, it's already soft. Let's see how it turned out inside. Well, look. Look how beautiful it turned out. I can't wait to try it to see how it tastes. But I assure you it's delicious. And most importantly, if you replace the apples with something else each time, for example, in addition to apples, you can add dried fruits, nuts, or even apricots. It will be delicious, and each time the cake will be new, not the same old one. So, let's cut it. Oh, it cuts so well. Well, I'm trying it. Very tasty. Very tasty. Probably, even if you use fresh apples and do this with fresh apples without preparing them, it won't have the same taste. When we simmered the apples in the pot, they acquired a kind of sort of something between a soft marmalade, you know, the kind made with juice. And if you didn't know that it's purely apples here, I'll just take it like this. It gives the distant impression that there's something else here. Besides apples, even pears seem to be present. But that's just my taste. It probably depends on the apples you use. Guys, it's very delicate. It's delicious. So what I want to say is, to the little hut, it's just similar in the method of preparation, but in taste, it's not at all like our little hut. Try it. I highly recommend it to all of you. It's a very tasty cake and it's easy to make. So this cake is enough for 12 people. Well, that's if everyone has one piece. But usually everyone wants seconds. Be sure to try it and write me your reviews. Make it perhaps not only with apples, but with something else. And I'm looking forward to your photos on Instagram. It's very delicious. I highly recommend it to everyone. Bavarian sudden apple cake. This is the delicious treat we made today. Thank you for being with me today and watching this video. Be sure to make the cake. You will be super duper satisfied. Well, that's it. Like, share this video, click the bell so you don't miss the next recipe. The link to my Instagram and Telegram is under the video. Subscribe. Can't wait for your photos. The cake is awesome. Watch me on the German TV channel R1. Bye.